Am I live? Can you hear me? Okay. Wow, all the Grace titles. I want you to know that the publishing company picked Grace Comes First. I'm still getting used to it as a title. But I want to ask, before I get started, I'm going to be talking about polyamory. I wanted to ask, and you can say, I don't want to tell you, that'll be one of the choices, but how many people are considered themselves poly? Whoa, okay, cool. We're going to talk about that, okay? We're going to get to that, because it's a good question. There is a poly mindset. And how many people are like poly curious? Okay, and then I guess this is a good crowd. I don't have to. We don't need. It's none of your business. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about my story of opening my marriage about 6 years ago, and poly. There are a lot of poly people here, so you know what I'm talking about. Probably one of the hardest things is the names and the pronouns can get very confusing. So I'm going to talk about, did I just go? I'm going to talk about, please let me talk. Okay, I'm going to talk about husband number one, and then I guess I could refer to as husband number two. He isn't here. Husband number two will be fine. So about 6 years ago, I had been married to husband number one for about 25 years, and we have two beautiful children, and I was very happy, very in love. Husband number one is, I consider him my soulmate. I was just very happy in my life. But the one thing that wasn't working for me was I felt that we were mismatched sexually. And I talk about this a lot in the memoir, that I think different relationships have different purposes in your life. And for me, a lot of my relationship with husband number one was healing and being nurtured and being artists together, and it was a very successful, wonderful relationship, but I felt at a certain point I wanted to really, do you keep losing me a little bit? Or? Okay. It's okay, just keep going. Okay, thank you. So, I wanted to explore, I wanted to have sex every day as a meditation. I wanted to explore kink. There were all these things that I wanted to explore, and he just wasn't that interested in that. And it created somewhat of an internal crisis for me. And I think it's really interesting when you're in that situation, when you're married, and you want to do something sexually different than what your partner is interested in, you're kind of stuck if you're in a totally monogamous situation. And your choices are divorce or having an affair. And I couldn't imagine divorce. He is my family. He's still my family. I feel really connected with him. And I didn't want to have an affair. I didn't want to lie. As soon as you have an affair, you're the bad guy. You're the person who's cheating. So I was trying to figure out what to do for many years, and I went to, one summer I went to this retreat, and I was talking to a friend that I don't get to see very often, and I said, what are you doing, what's going on? And she told me that for the past year, she had been in therapy with her husband. She had discovered that she knew this about herself for a long time, that she was attracted to women, but it was becoming a thing for her where she felt like a part of herself would die if she didn't get to explore having sex and being in love with a woman. So she told her husband about it, and they went into therapy, and they very carefully explored for a year what it would look like if they opened their marriage, and And it's not that I hadn't heard about polyamory. I had friends who were doing poly. I had a mentor who at one point was in a commune where there were women and they had a schedule of who could sleep with who at what point, and they had all these rules about you couldn't sleep with the same person, you can sleep with the same woman 2 nights in a row. It just sounded awful to me. I was not interested in that at all. And that's one thing that I've really discovered in this whole world of poly is that there are so many different ways of doing it. There are so many nuances. It's kind of like being a parent. You know, I don't parent exactly the way my neighbor parents. There are so many variations of what to do. And I like that. I like that about it. So what happened was I came home and I said to my husband, it was late at night, I was so excited about this idea, and I said to him, would you be open to discussing opening our marriage? And he said, yeah. And so the next morning, we woke up, and the first thing he said to me was, nice out-of-the-box thinking. And I love that. I love it. It was like he was having stuff happening too that he wasn't quite sharing with me. And I thought a lot about that because I've had friends who tried to open their marriage and brought up the subject, and it was disastrous. That happens too, can be scary. But I think what it was my husband number one and I have always been, are you losing me again? Husband number one and I have always been artists together. And our vows and our first commitment to each other was to, how do you bring me a new mic? This is down my stockings in the back. Change me. No. Sure. It's okay. I'm not shy.
She's Polly.
Oh, yeah. If you think this is not planned, this is actually... And she, there we go, and she, thank you, yes. Thank you, lover number 3. Okay, so, what do we, so, good, I'm glad we had that experience together. There's more trust built here, okay. So, so she helped us to start the process of opening our marriage, and husband number one was very nervous about it. He was very scared that, that we would lose each other. So I said to him, you know, you go off for take however long you want and just start dating and find a lover, and I'll stay home and take care of the kids and do the dishes. And that's pretty much what I did for 4 months. And he went off, and it wasn't as fun for him to go in and start dating. He eventually found a woman who he became very close with and fell in love with. And then I asked if I could start dating. And it was harder for him to be generous with me. And I think, I write a lot about this in the book, I think it is different for men. There are a lot of cultural pointers for one man and several women being together. Not that these are my role models, but harems, polygamy in Utah. Again, not that these are my role models, but at least they're there. And but he, you know, hung with me. We went through a process with it, and I eventually dated a lot and found a man that I fell in love with. He became husband number two. What happened was, at a certain point, with our 2 kids, it became too hard to have. We had 2 date nights away from the family a week. Both of us had 2 date nights. And it just became too hard with our kids and maintaining a family life. So husband number one came up with this idea, he's an architect, to transform our single family home into a duplex. And we did that, and we moved my lover into one side with me and his girlfriend into the other side with him, and our kids could go back and forth, and it was great. And then my husband number two, who wasn't husband number two yet, he told his ex-wife that he wanted the kids would be living with him half the week at my house. And she freaked out, and she was very threatened by the polyamory, sadly, and she took him to court and wanted to get custody of the children. And this is a sort of downer part of where we are, I think, with polyamory right now. It kind of is like being gay maybe 30 years ago. I ended up finding us a lawyer. I talked to a lot of lawyers, and it was very interesting. What they said is, in terms of being gay, you can't come to court and say, my ex-spouse is gay, therefore he's a bad parent. It's just not in the Bay Area anyway. That's not going to be a case. There was a big precedent-setting case about 25 years ago around kink and BDSM, and that person won. So you can't go to court and say, my ex-spouse is into kink, and so they're a bad parent. You kind of can go to court and say, my ex-spouse is living with, all these people, and it's hard. There's no precedent-setting case, and in fact, a full evaluation was ordered. The first time I met the evaluator, she interviewed me. The first thing she said to me was, it was something like, so poly's a really selfish lifestyle, huh? I was like, wow, okay. Bigotry abounds here. So we ended up winning, but it was really because husband number one just, he's really brilliant, and he just started talking to his ex-wife and actually used poly, what I think are poly techniques, talking to her about, let's both get our needs met. Why don't we try and make a situation that works for both of us? And he just sort of gently started talking to her over many conversations, and she agreed to let the kids live there. So I don't know what would have happened. I hope that we would have won. But anyway, not to be a downer, I want to talk about poly mindset. It's interesting writing this book. Sometimes my editors will say to me, they'll put a note in, what's the rule in poly around this? What are the rules on this one? And I think it's so funny because when I had this moment with my friend when she told me she was opening up her marriage, the first thing that hit me was, wow, I got so indoctrinated into the rules of marriage and the rules of monogamy, I didn't even know it. And when I started doing polyamory, at first I felt like, oh, was it doing it right? And what's the rules around polyamory? And then I got to this great place of, I don't want doctrine to rule my relationship. And for me, what polyamory is really out of the box thinking around relationship. And I don't even want to use the word rules. It's more that you create agreements with your partner, and the agreements come